Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of our podcast, Is Breakfast Included? What's going on? Not much, you say? Not much here either. Today on the show, I sit down with my good friend Gordon Keith. Now, Gordon is an on-air personality at a radio station in Dallas, Texas called The Ticket. He's been very supportive of this podcast, oftentimes pitching it on his show, which reaches a bunch of people. I know because I get the text every time he pitches the show. And I've been wanting to ask him to be on the show. I finally did. He agreed. We sat down. I wanted to talk to him a little bit about what he does, how he got into it. And that's pretty much the first 5 or 10 minutes of this conversation. Then we just go off. We talk about bands, we talk about music, we talk about me being a Black Sabbath gatekeeper, we talk about Duran Duran, we talk about bass playing, we talk about everything. And there's an ongoing joke through this whole interview that you'll probably get tired of by, I don't know, third time we make it. It was a lot of fun, and it went a completely different direction than I thought it would, but it went in a better direction than I thought it would. Let's just put it that way. I hope you enjoy this. Oh, and I have to say this. At one point, we were having so much fun that my recorder died, and I don't know. I think we were talking a good 10 minutes after that before we realized it. We went back, so it stops at a weird spot, and then it starts again. And anyway, you don't miss a lot. I hope you enjoy it. Let's check it out.
All right.
I didn't even hear anything. It's just all riffing.
Yeah, we'll riff. It'll be great.
Tell me who you are.
My name is Gordon Keith, and I'm a talk radio host here in Dallas-Fort Worth, and also been a writer here in Dallas-Fort Worth and a TV presenter. I don't know why I went so British with the job description there, but TV presenter on the telly here in Dallas and Fort Worth. Done some of that too, but my main job is as a radio host, and I've been with a station here in Dallas, Texas that's been on the air for, I don't know, like 30 years now. It's crazy. So I guess I've been very lucky to be in the same job for as long as I have. It's been great. Got to meet cool people like Michael Jordan and like Bernie. So it's the gamut, man.
Why you want to put me in with the GOAT?
Oh, dude, I thought of you the other day. We were doing a remote. Our radio show was doing a remote at Heritage Auction Galleries, which is, one of these auction houses that sells like really, big time memorabilia. And it was cool. They had our show out there to promote their upcoming auction. I got to play I think it was a 59 burst, Gibson burst. That was the only actual burst I'd ever played. So that was cool. But the coolest thing, Bernie, that I got to hold in my hand was Muhammad Ali's passport from back in the day. And it had both his names. It had Cassius Clay and Muhammad Ali is right after he had switched his name. And in the contact section back at the end, it had his mom's address there in Lexington. And it was the one that he traveled with throughout his prime right then, and you saw the stamps and all the countries he went to.
Nice.
But I thought of you because you're a big boxing guy.
Did it sell?
Yeah, I forget how much money it brought. It was a lot. But of all the things that I held that day, which were a lot of cool ones they brought out to us, I think that one impressed me the most because there's something about a passport for a figure such as Muhammad Ali, which transcends sports. He was such a cultural figure. And in that particular time of his life, it just was like
both hated and loved.
Hated and loved, right? Controversial but represented so much to some people, represented something else to others, and to have I've always was obsessed with Muhammad Ali. He was like my childhood.
And later in life, when the Parkinson's was really bothering him, he was still mobile. He was still getting around. But if you asked him for an autograph, he carried cards with his signature on them. He would just hand it to you. But he signed it, but he would keep a few in his pocket.
Right.
So if you ran into him and you said, "Oh, can I get an autograph?" he would just pull it out and give that to you. So you didn't have to sign. So I always thought that was kind of cool Ali, you know.
Yeah, that way you didn't have to disappoint anyone.
Yeah,
who came up and
yeah.
wanted an autograph, but it would have been too
Yeah,
difficult.
I met Joe Louis at one point, and it wasn't a very pleasant meeting, but I never got to meet Ali. Yeah.
I don't think I ever did either in all our time doing sports radio. I don't think we ever ran into him or even had him on the, sometimes we interview people obviously on the phone sometimes too. And I don't think we ever even interviewed him on the phone. I'd have to check on that.
Yeah. You know, I've met sports figures, baseball, football, sometimes by accident, sometimes, you're in the same room as them. But I've never met nicer athletes than boxers. I'll tell you, every boxer I've ever met, and I've met a lot of them, they're always so kind and generous with their time. They'll sign, they'll take pictures. But one was a real a-hole.
Joe Louis.
No, even more than Joe Louis. Not Joe Louis, Joe Frazier is what I meant to say, Joe Frazier. I never met Joe Louis. I think I said Joe Louis, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I meant Joe Frazier. But
Smoking Joe.
But Alonzo Highsmith, who was a former football player, but became a boxer after he retired, and he was just such a dick, And he was sitting around all these greats. I was at the Foreman Savarese fight in Atlantic City, and I was sitting in the section. I had won a contest on the Eagle.
Oh, you did?
And I went to Atlantic City to watch this fight, and I was sitting in the section with all the boxers, and I couldn't believe it. Joey Gamach, Daryl Coley, what's his name? He was a cruiserweight, Dwight Qualley, who was Dwight. What was his name before he changed it to Qualley?
Was it Joe Louis?
It was Joe Louis. Then he changed it to Dwight Qualley. Oh, you're not going to let that one go, are you? Anyway, but they were all so nice. I met Roy Jones Jr. He was commentating. Met Larry Merchant. But Alonzo Highsmith, man, I thought he was a little better than all of them.
Really?
Yeah. And his boxing career was just shit.
Man, almost, it's crazy. Almost every famous person that I've ever met through work, obviously, there has been only one or two who've ever been jerky to me. I think that most everyone considers, I bet you celebs are real stuck up. But the ones that I ran into, it seems like they were all pretty nice.
Yeah.
Some of them really, really nice.
Except for Joe Louis. Right?
Except for Joe Louis. Yeah. Joe Louis was the only one that I ran into. And I think it was because I mistakenly called him Joe Frazier. I think that's the only reason.
Anyway, can you say the names of the ones that were kind of jerks?
There was one young actress. I'm not going to say her name, but I was interviewing her for a movie that she was doing. And she was very off-putting the way she treated the people around her that were there to help her. And, I don't have too much of a problem with her being kind of dismissive of me because I'm just another press guy who was just sitting there, sitting down for an interview with her, sitting down for 5 minutes, talking to her about her movie. But kind of the way she was acting around the people around her, I felt was off the mark, and and it soured me on her. But I won't say her name.
That's fine.
Yeah, because
we'll call her Joe Louis.
You will call her Joe Louis. That's her placeholder name.
Oh, that joke's gonna get old by the time we're done. I've been fortunate to meet a lot of my heroes. I've been fortunate to meet a lot of celebrities. I don't know if that's fortunate or just whatever, but I always judge them. If you meet someone, and they're at an event, and the event's like within a period of time, a couple hours, whatever, and then you run into them and they remember your name, that's what's real to me. And I've met a couple of big celebrities that remembered my name from when they met me earlier in the day to later in the day. And I always thought that's a very admirable
Then
trait.
I would be a horrible celebrity then. I swear to you, Bernie, I cannot remember people's names.
Me either, man.
Someone will introduce, you can ask me 2 seconds later, and I wouldn't know the person's name.
That's why I think it's so cool that they did.
I know it.
I don't remember. I resort to just Mike. If I mean, hey, Mike. Oh,
it's funny you say that because my default is Chris. will call even my coworkers I worked with for 20 years. I'll just say, hey, Chris, when we pass each other in the hall, that's my default People who don't know that gag with me, though, always think that I get their name wrong. So I'm sure there's a lot of people who are grumbling. Man, what a jerk, this guy. Calls me Chris. He knows my name's Nathan. But yeah. Yeah, I wish I had that superpower because you're right. It is so endearing when someone remembers your name.
Yeah.
And I can't remember their names, but I have another weird superpower. I will remember, like if I met you, let's say you came to an event and I talk with you, I would remember something like, yeah, hey, good to see you again. They'd say, yeah, we met, let's say even 6 years ago. And I'd be like, does your mom still drive that old, she had that old Volvo, that square back wagon that she had. It was the only year they made the fives. Like I'll remember some odd detail they told me in a conversation with me.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you their name. I could not tell you their name.
Yeah. It's usually when people don't remember me, I just come back with, it's okay, I wouldn't remember me either.
Oh, see, now you made me sad.
All right, man. So what did you do? How did you get into this business?
So I started off in, it's interesting because I know what you do for a living. You're involved in the music business. And when I was in a band back in my early 20s, matter of fact, I may have been right at 20 or 21, and my band had broken up and I didn't have anything going on. And somebody asked me, hey, would you be interested in, coming on and being an intern at this radio station that's starting up? Because it's a brand new radio station starting up on a real like cheap AM signal. And I didn't have anything else going on at the time. It sounded interesting to me. It was a sports station. I wasn't a big sports fan. But I thought I got nothing else going on because music is not, I don't have a band right now. And so I started at that station as an intern, and it just kind of kept going. It was a bunch of funny, creative guys that hang out and you could shoot the shit with, and it was great. And we started this station together, and we kind of made our own identity and our own rules because we were all really green. So it grew into something that kept going. And I just thought, get 6 months out of this, it'd be great. And 6 months turned into a year, turned into a year and a half. And then the station just gets bigger and bigger. And then now we're getting close to celebrating 30 years on the air. And I think me and the two other dudes have been in morning drive for 28 years. So I wake up early.
Yeah.
But it's been great. So that's how I started. I just fell into it. And like so many things in our lives, everyone's life, it's a bit of serendipity. It's a bit of you were in the right place at the right time, said yes to one thing that turned into something bigger, and it changes the course of your life,
Yeah.
Just happened to meet, everybody's full of those little stories of you just meet somebody at an airport that tells you about this job and you end up taking it, and that's where you end up meeting your spouse, and then you have kids. It's like, who knows what guiding hands control our lives and move us into the positions where we can thrive. But the key is to recognize it and say yes when that thing falls in your lap.
Yeah. And I've always, because I started in this industry late, to not keep looking for something better. You ever go to those parties or those events and you're talking to someone, they're constantly looking over your shoulder to see if there's someone more important?
Right. Like, yes, that happens to me a lot, actually, Bernie. Thanks for bringing up that pain.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's it. Like, you recognized an opportunity, you dug it, it's something you like. Do you still enjoy it?
I do. I really do. And I don't like the grind of waking up early every morning, but I do love the people that I work with, and I love the fact that they still make me laugh and I still make them laugh. And then we have this group of loyal listeners that we hear from and have relationships with and see them all the time, and they laugh, and it's like we kind of have walked through life together. And so the enjoyment is absolutely still there for me.
Yeah. So you guys are a sports talk station, but your show is not a sports talk show.
Well, the two guys that I do the show with, they are sports-minded people, and they talk to sports. So when they talk sports, I just kind of turn off my mic and then research for a segment that I have coming up.
Yeah.
So we still do a sports show, but we get off sports all the time and talk life or something funny or talk about the news or talk about whatever. So it's kind of this hybrid of sports talk and life talk.
Yeah. Because when I was introduced to you, we have a mutual friend, Tommy Roberts.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, I've got this friend. Well, he just said, Gordon Keith wants your number. And I was like, okay.
You're like, who's Gordon Keith?
Who's Gordon Keith? And then he goes, oh, you don't know him? And then someone else is there like, oh, he's got a show on the ticket. And I go, why would I know that? Like,
right.
You guys know, like, I'm not a sports guy. But they introduced us. We hit it off. I'd like to think we hit it off.
Yeah.
That Joe Louis story I told you, and you were just instantly.
I was drawn right in.
Brought you right in.
I was in your web.
Anyway, you came out to Vegas. You were a big fan of the band I work for.
Yeah.
And you came out to Vegas, see a show, and then the next Monday you mentioned it on your show. And my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. And it was just like,
it's crazy.
I'm going through each text message, and I'm like,
you didn't know that many of your friends listened to the station?
Everyone knows you as Gordo.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, who's Gordo? You know, like, Gordo just mentioned you, blah, blah. And then someone said, Gordo said he went to see Duran Duran. And I was like, oh, Gordon.
Yep.
And then I called you, and I was like, dude, why didn't you tell me you're like this celebrity in town? And then the same thing happened when the morning I moved to New Jersey, you interviewed Simon Le Bon.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the podcast. He plugged it, said something it's an inside joke between he and I. And the same thing happened. And like all of a sudden we recently were contacted by a guy that works at Dickies Arena who heard about the podcast on your show and now reaches out to us and tells us like how his favorite episodes, which is really cool. So
that is really cool. That's awesome.
So
I love hearing that.
This really weird, not weird. We got this other audience that came in, you know, not a lot, but we love getting new listeners, especially people that aren't our friends that are listening. Just like your friends coming to see your band. Like,
right.
You know?
Yeah. No, you're getting fresh blood there.
We're getting fresh blood. So we love it, man. So, you know, thank you for being the celebrity that you are. Thank you for plugging this podcast.
Oh, that's awesome. And I loved it when Simon, I mean, he lit up. I think I sent you the interview, didn't I?
Yeah, you sent me the, well, I'd heard it. I was driving and I'm getting the same thing, text, you know, like, oh my God, Simon Le Bon just mentioned your podcast. And I have a partner who does this with me, and I text her immediately and I said, dude, Gordon Keith, I just what I could shorthand, and then she starts looking for the interview. She's like, where do we find it? Where do we find it? But we did put it on our Instagram, the clip of him talking and wearing the shirt, and it really did. It got us a lot of attention.
That is great.
You know?
Yeah, it was so cool hearing him light up talking about you. Oh yes, Benny. Is breakfast included?
Yeah.
I can't do a Simon. Yeah. Although I did recently try to do a Nick Rhodes. I woke up one morning and I had a real deep voice sounding, and I started doing, and I had been watching some Duran documentary or something like this. So I had Nick Rhodes on my brain. I'd heard so much of him talking and attempted a Nick Rhodes and actually put it out there. I can't do it here, but I'll send you the audio of it. But yeah.
So you're also a bass player.
I am.
Left-handed.
Yeah. Well, I'm left-handed, but I play right-handed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you do that so they wouldn't burn you? Because, you know, you used to burn people in the middle.
Yeah, back in the old days,
left-handed people.
The nuns would take a branding iron to your wrist if, you know, they would just do something to injure you in some way. No, I started playing right-handed because there just weren't instruments. You know, it's real interesting when I go back and look at pictures of when I was a kid. And every kid always picks up like a tennis racket and pretends like they're playing guitar at some point. And I would play it left-handed, what we call left-handed, you know, the neck facing the left-handed way, when I was doing the tennis racket. But then by the time when I got a real instrument, there were no left-handed instruments to play. And I don't know that I was aware you could flip a right-handed instrument upside down and even attempt to play it that way. and my brother was learning guitar, so I just started playing right-handed, what we call right-handed.
Yeah.
And I'm actually really glad that I did, because every time I go into a music store and there's that little bitty tiny left-handed section, you know,
Yeah.
you just have very few instruments to choose from. And it also seems to me like what we say is right-handed, that should be called left-handed, because the left hand does so much, you know, all the fretting and all the technique that you have to use with your left hand is so important that you can make an argument that that should be left-handed playing and the other way should be right-handed. But
yeah, now I didn't think of that. Now you've just blown my mind.
yeah,
I'm left-handed. I
yeah,
play left-handed.
I know. I noticed that you were left-handed. You actually play left-handed?
No.
You play right-handed.
Right-handed.
Okay, and then here's something really ridiculous that I got into probably about 5 years ago. I got to thinking, you know what? I want to learn how to play left-handed as well. I'm a left-hander that plays right-handed, but I want to be a left-hander that plays left-handed. So I bought myself some left-handed instruments, and I can play just barely passable left-handed. But it was this weird challenge. I was like, man, I need to work on my neuroplasticity and challenge my brain to do something new. So I'm going to learn how to play an instrument, the guitar and the bass left-handed. And so I actually have both right and left-handed guitars now.
Are you still doing that, or they just sit there now?
No, I haven't done it in a while, because I've actually been trying to practice and get good at playing a few challenging things left-handed on bass. As a matter of fact, I'm teaching someone bass, and they've gotten into John Taylor, as a matter of fact. And I was like, God, you know, I really need to, like, I know how to play Rio and several of the songs, but they wanted to learn Girls on Film. And I was like, you know, I don't ever really actually learned it properly. Like, I played Girls on Film in my 8th grade talent show on bass, because I was a bass prodigy and I could play Girls on Film. But now I went back and looked at the tape. Bernie, I played it so inaccurately. It was unbelievable how wrong I was playing it. So I was like, I got to learn Girls on Film. I was, 12, 13.
We were all prodigies at 12.
I know. We thought we were geniuses. And of course, now when you have all these, you go to YouTube and you can hear the bass soloed on a lot of these multi-tracks, like the master recordings. Have you seen any of this stuff? How they'll pull like the actual bass or guitar from some famous song, and I think it's Garage Band or Rock Band. What's the one, the video game? Rock Band or Rock
Band. What was it?
Guitar Hero. Somehow that phenomenon allowed us access to these master recordings where people can go in and solo each individual track. And so when you hear the original artist playing what they played on the track, and you have access to that kind of accuracy, which back in the day, you and I were kids, we listened on cassette player, and you'd rewind and listen over and over again trying to figure out how to play something.
Or if you had a record player, you'd
slow it down, put your finger on it, slow it way down and everything. But yeah, so lately I've been playing a lot more right-handed bass and learning some, more technical bass lines.
Who was the catalyst that made you want to play bass?
2 guys, Ben Orr from the Cars, because I thought he looked so cool. Ben was just he was a real pretty boy, and all the girls loved him, and he, he wasn't that, detailed of a technical player or anything. But he was just cool looking. Yeah. So I liked him for his look. And then probably John. John was the first guy that I remember listening to and thinking that bass sounds really cool. Like I could pick out his bass lines and hear it, and I liked that style, that mixture of finger style and popping that he would do. And so he was a big influence on me as well.
Yeah, he was definitely underrated.
Yeah. And there's still people who say that John, he can't really play. He has someone that plays for him. He's not on all those recordings. There's all these conspiracy theories because people just can't buy that John.
Do they think he's JFK Jr. too?
Yeah, they think he's and he also killed JFK. But yeah, he's gonna. But yeah, John, just particularly on those first 2 albums when he was really young, and he just was so bass forward back then, and came up with some really great parts that are so great for anyone getting into bass to study and learn and get into, because he was very, very creative, I think. And it's unexpected because the guys were so pretty.
Yeah. And, like I wasn't a big fan of theirs, but I get to hear him every night, and I hear how intricate his bass lines are. Some of them are straightforward, some of them are, but even those, you could tell he put a lot of thought into which notes to play. But then you hear something like, everyone knows the Rio bass line, but you hear something like Girls on Film, and there's a lot of little nuances that he puts in there.
There are. And what's interesting about that is, like, I knew Rio, I learned Rio, and so I was talking to someone recently, and they were like, "Oh, you know Rio? That's the hardest John bass line," and it's not, in my opinion. It's the most known one. It's a very iconic one, but to me, Girls on Film is a lot bigger endurance test. Girls on Film, the actual recording that he made of it on the album. I mean, there's so many different little parts that he puts in there. And John also has this weird thing. I kept wondering why I wasn't getting the exact kind of ghost note-y thing that he would do exactly right. I could ghost note it because there's lots of them in it. But John does that weird thing to where he ghost notes on the string ahead. Like he'll ghost note on the D string when he's going to be playing the root note on the A string. So he moves, he sweeps back down the bass strings. And most people ghost note it on the same string, just with the index and middle finger. And I think that's also contributed to a lot of the misconception that he didn't play, because they'll watch him play live and it doesn't look like he's playing the bass line. And it's because he
has a very unorthodox picking hand. So it's not even moving.
Right. He's so minimalist in his movement.
I don't get to talk to people about this. I watch him play every night. I listen to him play, and he hits those notes because of the way he picks his picking hand is.
Exactly.
As I watch it and I'm like, what is he doing?
Yeah, because when you're looking at it, it's not very clear what he's doing. Yeah. And it wasn't until he came out with those Stone Love Bass Odyssey tutorial videos during the pandemic, when I was like watching him going, oh, that's why I haven't been able to put together what I'm hearing him playing and what I'm seeing him playing. It's because he does that unorthodox picking style of his ghost noting on a different string than he's actually going to be plucking. Yeah. And everyone misses that with John.
And I don't think it's an intentional thing that he does. I think it's the way he learned to play.
It's the way he learned to play. Absolutely.
Like,
and it's actually a very ingenious way to play. And I'm surprised that more teachers don't teach the way he plays it, because economy-wise, it's incredibly economic to play that way. And that's why it looks like his right hand is hardly even moving, because he plays so economically. And it also gives a different sound. It's a different ghost note sound than it is if you just do the technique of ghost noting on the same string that you're about to pluck with another finger.
Yeah.
So, I think that, and that's something that I didn't even just, as long as I've been a John fan, I didn't even discover that until like the last year when I got serious, and I was like, I'm going to learn the Girls on Film bass line for real. And yeah, I still want to do a video of how to play it the way he plays it on the album, because there's lots of tutorials out there, but nobody's playing it exactly the way he's playing it on the album.
It's always like that. I worked for a band. I can't say their name because I signed an NDA, but the day that they were going to rehearse before the show, they said he wanted to see me in the dressing room to go over all the changes. There are a few changes, and he starts playing this really iconic bass line, telling me like, oh, there's chorus here, and then when I go to here, there's some, and I'm just smiling, and he said, what's wrong? And I go, number one, like to watch the guy who wrote the riff, is freaking me out.
Yeah.
And to realize I've been playing it wrong for 30 years.
Right.
Like, I feel like an idiot. But so yeah, it's the same thing like what you're talking about. Like, it's been shown to play this way, but I watch him play it. I never try and learn his bass lines. Like, I think I line check with the bass line from Turn Me Loose by Loverboy.
Really?
Because I love that bass line, that intro.
Yeah.
I think I know the one note from Planet Earth, the
I know that
the
I don't galloping
know the change, and then I know the hook from Notorious, because it's similar to the Loverboy song.
Bernie, come on.
That's the only reason I know.
To me, in my opinion, you as John's tech, you need to know all those bass lines in case John trips, breaks a finger, something like that at the show, and you have to step in. Somebody's got to be able to step in and play.
Yeah, that's not going to be.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to be me.
Or you just come up on stage and all of a sudden Duran does all Loverboy cover songs.
Well, they just do that one song, and they just have to play the intro over and over again because that's all I know.
But yeah, it's great that it's amazing to me that you've been with them as long as you have. That's some longevity there.
It's amazing to me, man, that I've been with them for almost 12 years. By the way, we've talking a lot about Duran. I never talk about Duran on this.
Yeah, I know. If you don't want to talk,
no.
Just
It's funny that I knew it would come up with you because you are genuine about it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, number one, when I got the call years ago to come fill in for their bass tech, I first thought was they're still around,
Mm-hmm.
That was my first thought because I'm not a fan. I wasn't a fan at the time. And then, after being with them so long, I don't see myself with another band.
Right.
I've had offers to come do other gigs and I've been offered permanent gigs, but I always say you stick with the devil, but in this case, the devil is actually quite friendly. He's a great guy.
So devilish.
He's a great guy, and they're all great guys. And I enjoy the vibe that we have within the organization. So,
well, and like you and I were talking a little bit before we hit record, the cool thing is that band now has been around so long, and they produced good music throughout their whole careers.
Yeah,
and it's great to see now that. I think they really are getting the respect that a lot of some people held out from them for a while.
Totally.
And those guys now they're living legends that are still doing relevant things, which that is just a great combination.
Yeah. I love when I talk to I talked to a guy named Jason McMasters who sings for Dangerous Toys and Broken Teeth, metal guy, one of the best metal singers out there. And I was emailing back and forth with him, and the first thing he said, he's like, "So you work for Duran Duran?" And he starts, I loved Seven in the Ragged Tire, and I had all those albums. I couldn't say it back then because I was a metal guy, and I'd get beat up. But I think now people are okay with saying, and they're getting a lot of well-deserved respect. I mean, they're icons. I say they're icons, and to me, it's an honor to be able to do that, be part of it.
And I think that music has also changed from when you and I were young, and it's almost like it wasn't enough just to like some bands; you had to hate other bands.
Yeah.
And it seems like young people now today are a little bit more Catholic in their taste. They're a little bit more like I like music, and they don't feel as compelled to hate on certain artists just because there's some different genre.
Yeah, that's very much true. But also, the kids this day and age, they only like a band for so long, and
I know it.
They move on.
Yeah,
they're very fickle. Me being the father of a 25-year-old boy, I watched him like, oh, this is my favorite band, and a week later, oh, they're lame. Yeah. I watched all that. But that's the deal. Like you and I, we still love the bands we grew up.
Right.
I still love Black Sabbath. I still love Tom Petty.
The other interesting thing, Bernie, I want to get your take on this and how the music business has seemed to change is like how many of these older acts are still doing really well with like young people. A lot of songs, like a song will blow up on TikTok or some old, the Kate Bush song on Stranger Things gets, and all of a sudden it's back up the charts.
Yeah.
Old music in a way has never been more relevant. And I think it's because of streaming now. You don't depend on radio stations to feed you whatever, younger people can listen to whatever they want to. And I've been really amazed when I talk to young people at how many of the old acts they actually know.
Yeah.
And they know the songs of and that they're fans of, and they don't treat it as like, oh, that's just some old band.
Yeah.
They can be like, there's young people who are huge Smiths fans, for example, today. And And I think that's pretty cool.
I think it is too. And I have my opinion on that. It's not a very popular opinion. And usually when I go off on this, get on my soapbox about it, I'm told to get off of it real quick.
I want you to climb up on that soapbox.
My thing is the bands that the older bands like the Smiths, like Duran Duran, is those songs are timeless.
Mm-hmm.
Like they wrote those songs and they were in a zone when they wrote them, as opposed to these new acts who have 6 or 7 writers on one song. You know, years from now, and I know we're on this Duran Duran kick and we'll stay on it for a second. Years from now, people are going to hear, 40 years later, you're hearing Rio and it's still a fucking barn burner. 40 years from now, it's still going to have that same effect. If we're all still here,
Mm-hmm.
it's all good. And you take, I don't want to say an Okay, we're back. Something happened with the recorder and it stopped, and you guys missed all my soapbox.
Yeah. What's with you and equipment? I wouldn't trust you to run equipment, Bernie. I hope you don't do it professionally.
Anyway, where we did get into a conversation. He asked me about my 2 favorite bands, and I went into gatekeeping.
Yes. You're a Black Sabbath gatekeeper as to there's only one Black Sabbath.
There is only one Black Sabbath.
And that's with Dio as the singer.
Ozzy. Oh man, I've even gotten in arguments with my son about this.
Really?
Like almost come to fisticuffs. I get so angry. I don't know why that makes me so mad. When people
Have a different opinion than you do?
not that have a different opinion, they can have their different opinion, but if I want their opinion, I'll give it to them when it comes to Black Sabbath.
Do you still play a lot? Like, do you ever get a chance to sit and play guitar?
I haven't picked up a guitar and made actual notes probably in 6 months. But I have a bunch of guitars, and I'll walk by and I'll pick one up and just run my fingers across it,
Mm-hmm.
or I'll do a little lick, and then I just put it right back in the boat.
So you don't feel compelled to make music ever?
I do. I always feel compelled to make music. I just feel
Just
that
never do it.
I just feel that there's people out there doing it much better than me. That what do I have to offer?
But they're not you, Bernie. They're not you. And there's something that you could do with it that would be different than anybody else. Let me ask you this. Did you ever get into these extended range guitars? Because today's, like John Petrucci and these guys have been so inspiring to a lot of younger players that they're into all these 7 and 8 string guitars now.
Man, when the most experimental guitar I've ever, what did you call it?
Extended range
guitar or whatever that I've ever owned. I had an Ibanez Gem, and that's about as
experimental,
and that was a 6-string steel. But when 7 strings,
the Ibanez Gem, wasn't that the integrated handle
that had the monkey handle?
Yeah,
the monkey grip is
the monkey grip.
I hope nobody gets
it was
offended.
Steve Vai
that
came up
grip,
with that, I think, right?
Yeah, Steve Vai. That was his guitar, the Ibanez Gem, and I had the blue floral pattern, which is very rare now. I also owned a Paul Gilbert RG model, which the white one. Paul Gilbert had the white with the painted F holes. I was really into those kind of aesthetics.
Mm-hmm.
But 7 strings to me, I thought that when they were introduced, they were. I thought the concept was cool. I just could never figure it out. It was a low B.
Yeah,
and it's almost like Eddie Murphy used to tell this joke, like that how the moonwalk was the stupidest dance ever, and it's mainly because he couldn't do it.
Right.
So,
right.
That's
the way you feel about
that's how I felt.
7 and 8 string guitars.
7 and 8 string guitars. And then Steve Vai recently introduced the Hedra, which is like a guitar with a harp. And have you seen it?
Yeah, yes, I have.
It's I was at it's that kind of stuff. If you're Steve Vai, you can get away with anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not big on that. I feel about guitars like I feel about basses. If you can't do it on 4 strings, just but some guys need that 5th string.
I get intimidated by 5 string. I mean, I just never sat down and learned one. I've never I think. Well, I have owned a couple of 5 strings, and I never held them for very long. But it just confuses me when there's a low B string on it, and then I had one 5 string that had a high C string instead, and I had it strung that way. But yeah, I'll concentrate on the 4 strings. Give me 4 strings.
I can you know what? I can barely play 6 strings on a guitar. I say that, and it's true. Like I'm very limited in my playing. So there's a guy named Max Cavalera from Sepultura metal band from Brazil, and he plays 3 strings. He just has the D, the A, and the E, for his bar chords, and his riffs, and I've always respected that. I don't know. Maybe I am still a gatekeeper. I don't know. Maybe you're bringing
you need
it
to
up.
Open up.
I think I'm opened up. But I respect anyone who can take an instrument and like a 7 or 8 string and make actual music with it, other than the those riffs sound cool when they're in that low B. But if you can't do anything more than that, like Steve Vai actually plays all the notes on his 7 string.
So here's something weird that I got into. Have you taken a dive into Meshuggah and any of that stuff?
I just went to see Meshuggah.
Oh, you did?
I'd never seen them before. I'd heard of them.
Were they just here and I missed them?
I saw them at the Hammerstein in New York.
Oh, okay. I know they're about to come through DFW, I think, sometime soon. I hope I haven't already missed it. Now, there's something that I would have predicted I never would have gotten into. But I watched some videos, like these videos of drum teacher reacts to watching Meshuggah for the first time, those kind of YouTube videos. And then hearing a teacher, it would be like a jazz drummer who was hearing Meshuggah for the first time, and him breaking it down, going, "Oh man, this is really interesting. This is," and watching him marvel at what those guys are doing.
Yeah.
And that opened that world to me, going, it's really cool that people come up with really complicated, interesting new types of music. And Meshuggah kind of pioneered that djent kind of style way back in the day, and seeing how that created a whole new genre of heavy music.
A friend of mine reached out to me. He works in the industry, and he goes, "Hey, I've got an extra ticket for this band, Meshuggah." He didn't say this band. He just assumed that I knew who they were. And I go, "Yeah, I'll go." It's very last minute. And he's like, "Have you ever seen them?" And I'm like, "I've never heard them." But man, I was impressed. It's like a whole different style of music. It's like
totally
their own
different
thing.
Totally different. And that drummer, it's so freaky how they just don't play. You can't find the one in the beat. I mean, but they just do these patterns that are really intricate, and they are all right on top of it. I mean, there's no, you're not improving. I mean, you have to know where you are in that song.
There's no extra notes. There's no grace notes. There's none of that. And that's from the first time seeing them. But their fans, man, their fans know every word to their songs. They know all the breaks. They know all the breakdowns. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, so yeah, I dig that. I'm always open to something new. I am a gatekeeper. Do you think there's like a group for gatekeepers, like Gatekeepers Anonymous?
GA. Yeah.
GA.
Yeah, you need to attend.
Everyone's standing around with their arms crossed.
Hi, I'm Bernie. I'm a gatekeeper. Hi, Bernie.
Yeah. But and if anyone's wondering, like, we went the tape thing, the recorder stopped, and we just kept going, and then I realized it stopped. So
that's right.
That's what we're continuing that conversation. It's funny. I really appreciate you doing this, man, because I wanted to talk to you about what you do, but I think this conversation we're having it's a lot more fun to me. Not that what you do.
Well, thanks, Bernie. Yeah, what I do is not interesting. Thank God we didn't talk about your life, Gordon.
We got plenty of time to do that. But no, so Meshuggah's. But I'm not hip to a lot of new stuff. I hear new stuff. I hate to say this on TikTok. Like they'll play a song behind a video, and I'm like, "Oh, what's that?" And I'll have to Shazam it or figure out a way to. You know.
I think, from what I understand, there are bands who think in that way. Like they think, okay, we need to write a TikTok type piece of music that lends itself well to that. And that's how they get awareness for their band. I mean, I got no problem with that. It's like there are all these platforms that you can get exposure for your band. You know, I have no problem with you gaming that system, or at least trying to scientize it to a point to where you can get more ears on what you're creating.
Yeah. Are there any new artists? Like, is there a particular new artist that you're into? Other than, Olivia Rodrigo.
Yeah, she did come up earlier in the conversation, didn't she? No, but I'll tell you this: there's a whole segment of artists that I'm determined that I'm going to get into next. Is I really want to start studying singer-songwriters, like some of these great, because there's some really good ones in country right now too, who write some fantastic music, fantastic songs with incredible stories to them, and really raw and earthy singer-songwriters that come through. You know, and Texas is such a hotbed for those guys. So I'm determined to get into those dudes, and because I remember when Sturgill Simpson came out, and who's another one? Chris Stapleton and those dudes. I like seeing guys like that get popular, that have some substance to them and have something interesting about them.
Are you into Jason Isbell at all?
That's the one that I was going to bring up, in that I have so many friends of mine are saying, dude, you've got to listen to Jason Isbell.
Jason Isbell doesn't waste a lyric.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very fortunate to work with that camp, but I chased it. Like, I really chased that guy. I wanted to be associated with him. And I got the gig, and just to watch him, his band is amazing. He's amazing. He's an amazing guitar player, but he is by far one of the best, in my opinion, which doesn't count for much, songwriters out there. And like I said, he doesn't waste a lyric, and a lot of his stuff is depressing. There's a guy, Parker Millsap, who's a really good songwriter. Josh Ritter.
Josh Ritter's another one that people keep mentioning to me.
Josh Ritter's amazing. You know, he's like, I always say that, you know, I run across these roadies, you know, they've been doing it for years, and like they worked for Dylan, or they worked for, you know, and I think like there's going to be a day when I say, hey, I worked for Isbell, I worked for Ritter. Those are two of the most, in my opinion, prolific songwriters right now. You know, there's an artist named Morgan Wade. She's a really good songwriter, and she's on the come up right now. But there's so many singer-songwriters, because I love that. That's what I listen to mostly now, you know, is that kind of stuff. If you can write a good melody and something you can just play on an acoustic guitar and make it sound.
There's something so pure about that, isn't it?
It is, you know, like I came up in country, this Texas country, with Pat Green and Jack Ingram, who has reinvented himself as a singer-songwriter from he's come from the Barefoot and Crazy Jack to he's always been respected, but very well-respected songwriter now, who's won some Grammys, and, you know, so I always like like you said, maybe the storytelling, and
right.
You know, if you can do that in a song. But Isbell, you should really check out his stuff. It's Southeastern, the solo album.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. It's the album that made me go like, I don't need to play guitar, because I can't. You're never gonna achieve that.
And it's so funny, you were a fan before you started working for him.
Dude, I was a fan. I'll tell you what happened. If we have time for it before this thing dies again. What happened was I worked for Josh Ritter, but I was introduced to Jason Isbell I heard one of his songs, and I was like, oh my God. Then I found that, he was a member of Drive By Truckers, which I was a fan of, but not a huge fan. Just they're what they would call hits.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked up on his website, and he was playing at Southside Ballroom. And I went to the show. I finagled my way backstage. I met him and introduced myself, and just told him, like, dude, I love your music, and I don't normally do this. I don't normally fanboy like this. And he was so nice. And about 2 weeks later, my tour manager from Josh Ritter called and said, hey, what are you doing in September and October? And I said, I'm going out with you guys, because he was opening for Jason, and I hadn't worked with Josh in quite a while, so I didn't think I was going to have the gig. And I happened to have the time off from Duran. I went out and met those guys. And I remember after about a week on the road, I called home and I said, this is my gig. I don't care what I have to do. I'm going to infiltrate that camp. Got to be friends with Jason and the whole band. And at some point they needed a fill-in tech, and they gave me a call. And I went out and I did some dates with them, and it was really, really fun, and went back to Duran. And then I got a call from their guitar tech, and he goes, hey man, can you come out and do this gig? And I emailed their tour manager, and he's like, yeah, he goes, your name's come up a couple of times. The gig's yours if you want it. And like I said, I chased it. I've never chased a gig in my life. It either comes or it goes. I answer the phone and yes, I'll do the gig. But that one, I like to say I manifested it.
There you go. Right.
But I just wanted to hear those songs every night. I was such a big fan, and which is odd because I'm usually not a big fan of most of the bands I work for. You hear about them, whatever. But I was such a big fan of his music, and he's had such a slow and steady rise. He's won some Grammys, and he's done it all without radio support. It's all DIY.
Mm-hmm.
And, his success, I always say, like, I love the fact that he owns his own record label, his management, everything, as they say in the industry, if you make $1, you get 7 cents on that dollar, Jason makes $1, he gets $1,
Good for him.
But, I don't know if he'd appreciate me saying that, but that's how independent he is. And he's, like I said, radio has shunned him, but he's got this huge following, and his songs prove it. I'll get off my love box now of Jason Isbell.
Well, see, okay, so that's my next project, is to dive deep into Jason Isbell.
Yeah, man. Start with Southeastern, and then Something More Than Free. Everything he's put out is really good, and it just keeps getting better, And then you can listen to some of his stuff with the Drive-By Truckers, Dirty South. He wrote some really good songs on that album.
All right, so Bernie's top 5 singer-songwriters, your favorites.
My favorites,
Jason's going to be on the list.
Jason's going to be on the list. Neil Young, Tom Petty, to me, is tops that list. This is in no particular order.
Right.
So Jason, Tom Petty, Neil Young. I recently got into Dylan.
I've still got to do the Dylan dive too.
Yeah, I recently got into Dylan, but it took me a long time to get into Neil Young. Now Neil Young can do no wrong in my eyes. And I know. I mean, those are the obvious ones. And Josh Ritter. I mean, Josh Ritter is such a good songwriter, and he's such a good human being too. And that is in his songwriting. So I guess those are my top 5.
All right.
I've put two newcomers up with these legends.
With the legends. Well, that's a high compliment.
Mm-hmm. Everybody's going to say like, oh, you didn't say John Prine. You didn't say Jerry Jeff Walker. Man, I don't really. John Prine's written some great songs. Guy Clark wrote a bunch of amazing songs. But I think those songs that he wrote, when I hear other people perform them, and this has something to do with Josh Ritter too. Like Josh has some songs that they're great songs, but I don't think the right person has recorded it yet.
Really? Interesting.
And
that is true.
I
mean, there are certain writers and their songs are sometimes best performed by someone else. And then sometimes I'll hear a guy that no one can cover the song the way he did it originally.
Exactly.
It's strange.
Yeah.
But yeah.
There was a song, Jason Isbell, he wrote a song called Cover Me Up. And a guy named Morgan Wallen, who's huge right now, covered it. And then, I mean, didn't do anything special with it. He just covered it. This kid is huge, and I don't understand why, but to each his own. But I figure if you're going to cover a song, you should do it and make it yours, or attempt to make it yours. You know, I don't know.
But he didn't change it substantially.
It sounds like somebody covering. It sounds like a bad karaoke version of Jason's song. That's my own personal opinion.
That's your personal opinion. Yet the whole nation is buying Morgan tickets. I think he's coming through here like pretty soon, like this week or something.
The guy is blowing. More power to him. He's blowing up. He had some little controversy.
He had big controversy. I remember that.
Yeah.
Somehow he bounced back from it, though. I mean, it's like
there was nothing to bounce back from.
Career killers.
He pulled that little stunt. It got leaked, and it became even bigger. Like there was nothing to bounce back from. Like he never even suffered a record loss. It's like,
and he won Grammys, I think, this year, didn't he?
Michael Richards never had a career after that, and he was Kramer. You know, it's crazy, man. Anyway, I'm going to ask you another question. This has to do with your line of work. How do you feel about Dallas getting another sports talk station?
Oh, I think that as a listener, I guess it's good to have options, right? To have many stations. I mean, this story is a little bit complicated because the people who are going over there to start this new station, you know, were from our station. Yeah, so we were all close and then all a tight-knit group. So there's some complicated feelings surrounding that. But as far as from the consumer standpoint, you know, I think it's always great when anytime a talk station comes in. Yeah. It's just this one for me in particular has there's more ambivalence there than just being excited because there's a new station.
I get it, man. I get it. Is it like seeing your ex with someone else, like your good friend?
It's like I don't know. You know, we're right in the middle of the whole controversy and drama right now of this going on. So it's like I don't even trust my own feelings until I get a little bit of distance from the story. But right now, it feels like a swirling tornado that we're stuck in. That I'm trying to figure out how to feel about all this. Yeah. But you know, as of this recording, the station is only on its second day, the competing station. So it's weird. I will say that it is strange for us to see the one particular person, you know, who we were so close to going over there and doing this again. You know, I'd love for them to be doing it here with us, you know, at our station, but they have their reasons, I guess, that they wanted to start a new station.
Well, right on, man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what did we get out of this, Gordon?
What did we get out of it? We had a lot of laughs and had a lot of fun.
I met Joe Frazier, not Joe Louis.
That's right. That's what we learned. We learned that there is a difference between Joe Frazier and Joe Louis after all.
Yeah. One of them didn't meet me.
One of them didn't meet you, and one of them wasn't a jerk to you.
It's sad, man. In Joe Louis's last days, he was a greeter at Caesar's Palace.
Oh, really? He was?
Yeah. Yeah, man.
You know, I worry, Bernie, because I know you love boxing, but will we see a day when boxing is not even really allowed anymore because of the damage that people are probably doing to themselves with repeated?
I think I'm all for that, man, because, you know, boxers got a bad rap. There's no pension for boxers. If you're not smart with your money, they die broke. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, they die punchy, you know, and that's, you know, they have that whatever the football players, what is it, CTE?
Yeah, CTE.
But, you know.
It sucks because, you know, you like watching the sport, but it does suck if you think about what's being done to the human body during that time.
Exactly. And more of the younger boxers now, like, they're more businessmen. Mm-hmm. They're not going to put themselves in jeopardy. They're just going to go for as much money as they can because they know they got to, you know, Floyd Mayweather, love him or hate him, he's a genius. He's making millions and millions fighting exhibition matches with guys that aren't going to touch him.
He's the one who's fighting one of either Logan or Jake Paul. Which one is that? He fought
Logan Paul.
Okay, yeah.
He fought him, and it was just, you know, it's comical, but, you know.
Have you gone MMA? Have you
I watch
gotten
MMA,
into it?
Yeah. I do watch MMA. It's entertaining. There's certain fights, you know, I don't like. It's entertaining. I don't like sports and I'm not a pugilist, but I love that type of sport. I don't know if that's.
I didn't understand what you've said, but I'll just say that it's very wise sounding.
No. I like to see combat.
Okay.
You know,
you like watching men beat on each other.
I don't like to see blood. If you're a fan of boxing and you watch true boxers like a Marvin Hagler or a Ray Leonard, it's almost it's a dance and it's an art. And to see him,
you like the sweet science of
I do. I like the sweet science. So when people say like, Floyd Mayweather runs, he doesn't run. He's a defensive fighter. He doesn't want to end up punchy, as they say. So he's quite possibly the greatest defensive fighter we will ever see, because he's going to walk away from this sport filthy rich and all intact.
Right.
Whereas someone like, a Mexican fighter like Julio Cesar Chavez probably is losing his mind right now, because he would take 3 or 4 punches to land one, because he knew that left hook was going to put him down, but he'd take 3 or 4 hit to the head. That's my personal opinion. I love combat sports. I've loved combat sports since I was a little boy. I don't know what it is about it, but
you still like the traditional boxing? Would you say is more of your love than MMA?
I love traditional boxing more. I wish it wasn't so corrupt and it was big like it was in the 80s and 90s, and you had fighters who really wanted to prove they were the best. It wasn't about a belt. It wasn't about the millions. Yeah, it's about a belt. Joe Louis, for example, man, like a lot of people, and I could be wrong and people will probably correct me, but Joe Louis, he was the heavyweight champion of the world. And when he enlisted in the service, he fought exhibition matches to raise money for the war relief, and got out of the service, went back about his life, and the government who he helped got him on back taxes for all that money that he gave, that he fought and just gave 100% of it. And he could never come out from under that, because, when the IRS comes after you, it's fees and penalties, and it was millions that he made for them and for the war relief. And, he was broke. And, his biggest rivalry was against Max Schmeling, the German heavyweight champion. Max Schmeling beat him once, and then he came back and knocked him out. But Coke, an American company, when they were moving to Germany, they gave Max Schmeling this huge contract to be the face of Coke when they had the heavyweight champion here who needed the funds. And those are the stories you don't hear about boxers of what. Of course, it was a different time then, but there's always going to be those people looking for the ones that are easily. Mike Tyson's lost millions. Mike Tyson's not a popular fighter because of his criminal record, but he's managed to bounce back in a way. Like,
I think he's probably richer now than he has ever been, because he's all the pot that he's invested
he's got
in.
The grow farm in Desert Springs, and then you take the guy who made Tyson the most hated villain in boxing, Evander Holyfield, who's constantly declaring bankruptcy. I don't know, man. I love boxing. I love everything about it. I could do with or without mixed martial arts, but boxing and boxers is always going to be part of my life. I don't know why I love that sport so much, and why I invested so much of my time for useless information like I just gave you. I'm a pillar of useless knowledge.
Well, I think that we ought to finish this today, Bernie, with you and I taking our shirts off, strapping on the gloves, getting in the ring, and having a friendly Rocky Apollo Creed fight like they did at the end of Rocky 3, I think it was.
Rocky 3, yeah.
Yeah.
What favor?
Yeah. and we'll end the podcast right as both of us are about to knock each other's jaw off, like they did at the end of that
Can we leave
movie.
our shirts on, though?
Yeah.
They had their shirts on.
That's probably, even for an audio medium, it's probably safer for the listeners if we leave our shirts on. They don't want to be that grossed out.
No, they don't.
Well, thank you, Bernie.
All right, man. One more question.
Yes, sir.
It's called It Is Breakfast Included. If it was included, what would you have?
I would go with a great pancake, extra crispy bacon, in addition to a Belgian waffle, and some kind of eggs with goat cheese and grilled onions.
And that's why we have to keep our shirts on.
That's exactly right.
Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate
Thank
your
you,
time.
Bernie. Anytime.
All right. Right on. Gordon Keith, or Gordo, as everyone knows him by. It was a lot of fun, man. You can find him online or listen to his show online. Or if you're in Dallas, you probably know of Gordo. I really appreciate the time he gave me. I really appreciate his patience when the recorder went down. But I think that was the most fun, is us realizing that we had screwed up. Anyway, I am done. You guys have a great day. We'll talk to you next week.